it's a labyrinth, and the spiritual marketplace is a circus. It's a freak show. You will see a lot of people who can share authentic insight and can help you, but you also see people who are pretty much abusive, and you will see a mix of the two.
From your perspective, Artem, how would you say new age spirituality or
Mm.
modern pop spirituality actually makes it harder for us to have authentic, healthy relationships?
So let's first talk about what New Age spirituality or modern pop spirituality is.
Yeah.
There's a deep tendency of the ego after it reads spiritual literature, and especially after it has certain spiritual experiences. There's a very deep tendency to co opt and weaponize spiritual language
Yeah.
because having a spiritual experience or even being in a state of samadhi when it's very recent and it's not very mature, as we spoke before, does not eliminate most of the ego. So actually, people who say, "Oh," and speaking from my own experience, so
Yeah.
it's not like I was any different.
I could say
So
this
people
too.
who say,
Same thing. Yeah.
"Oh, when they identify with the ego and start identifying as awareness, they say, oh, 95% of my suffering is no longer there."
Yeah.
uh, uh, you can, almost everything ego says is a lie. So you can basically say 95% of your ego is still there.
Yeah.
And it was my case, and it's usually the case with the people I'm observing.
Yeah.
So how does it look like weaponizing language? So people start saying things. The ego likes to accuse and judge, and basically what happens is that people just start accusing and judging in spiritual language.
Hmm.
So like there are so many examples. It's hilarious but it's deeply tragic because they also continue to put themselves on a pedestal, and it can be extraordinarily deceiving because they do it in noble language. Like for example, I once had a lady tell me, "I'm sorry you don't have acceptance," and then block me. I mean, I would be fine continue speaking to you, and so who doesn't have acceptance here,
Yeah, that's right.
or uh, uh, another person who considers himself very very loving. Well, of course he isn't. He would say something like, "I love you, Artem. I have love for you. I just don't want to see you." I mean, if you
Yeah.
don't want to even look at me,
Right.
and you're talking about love, you know, no, you love yourself, my friend,
Yeah.
and you don't want to see me because spending time with me or being around me is uncomfortable for you. That's not my problem, and that's not love. So stop telling me
Right.
that you love me. Or another person will- would say things like "let go" to mean dump. So
Mm.
it's like, oh, I had to let go of him, meaning that
Yes.
I had to dump him. Let's
See a
be
lot of it.
honest. It's not letting go. So there's this tendency to sort of acquire this spiritual language and then start talking about the ego in a very noble terms. And that's really bad because to people that haven't had any experiences, uh, it can be quite appealing.
Hmm.
It may feel like this person is wise and blah, blah. And that's actually the goal. The goal of acquiring the spiritual language and weaponizing it is continue to sort of assert your superiority in the spiritual kind of realm, and to present yourself as spiritually much more advanced or and kind of realized person than you really are. So to kind of assert a position of spiritual authority.
Yes.
Now, with regards to New Age and modern spirituality, I mean, you can say that it's modern because the terms that I used, let go, acceptance, love, unconditional love, they're mostly modern. I mean, if you look at the ancient spiritual tradition in Buddhism, for example, they don't speak a lot in these terms.
Mm.
But the same thing happens in Buddhism. So that's not so people like would start say, that's not skillful, that's
Yeah,
not right speech,
right.
or this is not like the noble way and things like I spoke to a Buddhist teacher who is actually considered to be a very good Buddhist teacher, well, not in my opinion. And he said something like he can be enlightened because he doesn't use noble language. I
Oh,
mean that has nothing to do with like the language that you use has nothing to do with enlightenment.
no.
I I'm not using noble language, and I won't be using noble language because
Right.
noble language is just confusing. It's designed to lure. Well, it only has two uh, goals. It's either to lure someone into the path, right? Just to because ego wants to be noble,
Mm-hmm.
ego wants to be benevolent,
Yes.
like ego wants to be looked up to. It wants to so just sort of to lure someone into the path by speaking in noble language, or to be speaking, or to present yourself as someone noble, as someone enlightened. So it only has two functions. Other than that, it's much better to use ordinary language because ordinary language lands much better,
Yes.
and and it has much less of deceitfulness around it. So it happens in Buddhism. It
Mm.
happens in every spiritual. It absolutely happens in Christianity also.
Right.
When people would say, "Oh, you don't have Jesus in your card," or like blah 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 blah
Right.
blah 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 blah. So this isn't really unique to modern or New Age spirituality. So like this is a situation where someone's spirituality, someone's acquisition of spiritual beliefs and mode of speaking and modes of accusation, modes of spiritual accusation is stands in the way of their spirituality. Like I repeat it again and again and again, that in authentic spirituality, the focus of your attention must always be on you, on your reaction to another person.
Mm.
If you're an empath, for example, but by the way, empath is a great example of that. Like empath is basically, people who call themselves empaths. Well, first of all, it's wonderful that you had a conscious opening to the extent that you start feeling what you perceive to be the feelings of other people,
Yeah.
but you're still feeling them,
Yeah.
and you need to continue to feel them. But what happens a lot is that the people who pronounce themselves empaths are basically in the utmost denial and responsibility for their energetic, emotional reactions towards other people. And
Yeah.
they place the blame and responsibility squarely on everyone else and almost never on themselves. Oh, I feel your bad energy. I
That
feel
was
your
me.
bad vibes. Well,
I
you're
did.
feeling it, my friend.
Right.
And
Right.
yes, like if I'm completely fine around you and you feel my bad energy, that's actually not my problem. That's yours.
Right.
And so we need to investigate it. So basically, it's a very spiritual way of saying, I don't like you very much. You see, and but compare how open, honest, and vulnerable it is to say, I feel bad around you or I don't like you very much, compared to you have bad vibes.
Yes.
You
Much
see,
harder.
it's yeah, of course,
Much harder.
it's actually very ugly. So when you kind of when you put responsibility on what you feel on other people and you accuse them in this very kind of noble spiritual language, right? Now, not just there's something wrong with you, but there's something spiritually wrong with you.
Hmm.
Oh, there's like darkness in you.
Yeah.
Do you feel it? Maybe
Yeah.
it's yours. So
Yes.
so it's so if this is what you mean by New Age spirituality, of course, there are also like pretty much delusional beliefs of crystals and like other things. And by the way, I'm not saying that people who experience some energetic experience when they get in touch with crystals and stuff like that. I'm not invalidating that. This is
Yes.
very true for them, and what they experience uh, with those things is a valid experience for them. But the continued spiritual journey is the exploration and acceptance of this experience rather than first of all universalizing it and insisting that it's going to work for everyone,
Mm,
or kind of thinking that it's not a kind of opportunity for exploration, but rather a tool to lead your life.
right.
You see, so
Yes.
so you can manage your internal experience with crystals or other techniques for as long as it works, but sooner or later, uh, nothing works, and sooner or later you will have to accept all of your internal experience in its totality. So so yes, as you notice, the what all of these things have in common is the denial of responsibility.
Hmm.
And by I wouldn't even say responsibility, like it's not your fault that you feel this way, but the disowning,
Yeah.
disowning,
Lack
right?
of
It's not
ownership.
it's not me who feels this way.
Right.
It's your vibes. It's not me who feels this way. It's the crystals, right? It's
Yes.
not it's not me who feels anger. It's you lack acceptance. So my anger is justified. I'm just like Jesus, who is chasing the money changers from the temple. And I
Yeah.
mean, believe it or not, some people gave me this actual justification for
Oh
for
no.
their anger.
Oh no.
So they would be very angry at me, and then I would say, let's explore your anger. And he was like, I have every right to be angry. I'm like Jesus. I'm chasing like okay,
Wow.
Jesus. So so
Yeah.
uh, so it happens in all spiritual traditions, and uh, unfortunately, unfortunately, the spiritual language of the sword is all but has all but become mainstream, almost.
Yeah,
So
I
it,
see
it's
that.
pretty much
Yeah.
it's pretty much starting saturating. It started to saturate uh, uh, even mass media, things like movies or TV shows. And
Yes.
unfortunately, it's probably going to be more and more mainstream with time, which means that we'll probably be witnesses to a lot of kind of this perverse spiritual battles, uh, which are absolutely just as egoic in nature as everything else, but they will be using noble spiritual language. So the parallel that I drew quite some time ago is that uh, the the path to enlightened society uh, is remarkably similar to the path of enlightenment of an individual. But if in the individual case, it takes 10, 15 years after the moment of realization. And I mean, some people never get there. Some people meditate for 30 years and they're not awake. But generally speaking, once the path has begun, then it takes like 10 years.
Mhm.
On the scale of society, the path has begun. It began with the intellectual enlightenment, what
Mhm.
people call enlightenment as the period of a history, but it's probably going to take a few centuries, or maybe even 1,000 years. Uh, so the intellectual enlightenment, which is the realization that reason works, basically. So
Mhm.
science works, reason works. So it's basically the realization that reason is more important than feelings. So in a way, it's discounting feelings, right? Not as a uh, uh, sensation. Yet you cannot
Right.
discount feelings as a sensate experience, but as something that is informative in a way that if I'm angry, then I'm right,
Right.
right? In this way, right? So it happened in the Age of Enlightenment a few centuries ago, and even this, not everyone is on board with that.
Right.
So not even everyone is on board with science yet, right? But look at how it transformed our society. Look at how it transformed the standard of living. So we can say that the period of enlightenment in historic terms was, let's say, the mind awakening. Now the society goes through the heart awakening,
Mm.
which means that the society is less and less tolerant to violence. It's more and more aware of abuse. And it's been going on like with every decade. There's less and less. Uh, but of course, just like an enlightened ego, right? The tendency is not to look at oneself, right? So,
Mhm.
but to punish. So the ego always has a tendency to punish.
Yeah.
So what we're observing now is basically what you would observe in a person who doesn't identify with the ego and acquired a spiritual ego,
Yes.
where people again assume the kind of give the utmost importance to how they feel, all science, reason, and evidence be damned. And they want to punish others for how they feel, and they want to accuse others. Cancel culture,
Yeah.
the woke movement is pretty much the spiritual ego movement.
Yeah.
If we look at it on the level of society, right? So if we kind of try to make parallels with how society moves into this direction, as individual, then kind of the woke movement is the completely equivalent to the spiritual slash enlightened ego, right?
Yeah.
I know everything better than you. I'm much more moral person than you. If I feel bad, that's your fault, and you need to be punished for it. And I'm right, and you're wrong all the time. So the feelings are very instructive. The feelings are the most important thing in the world. So so the authentic heart awakening is accepting the feelings and accepting the suffering. The deepest spiritual impulse is making the unconscious egoic suffering conscious.
Mm.
So, so we are sort of, as a society, we're sort of uh, in the beginning of heart awakening, and of course, it's not uniform, right? Because there are echelons of society who are still anti-reason,
Yeah.
and so it's a sort of a because it's made of billions and billions of individuals. So why the reason that I'm saying this is that we will most likely see in the next decades more and more of weaponization of the spiritual language, just like the spiritual ego does. More and more of these terms saturating our culture,
Yeah.
and uh, and it will be more and more difficult to navigate. So so the advice that I can give to navigating it is always the same. Pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your responses, pay attention to your pain, pay attention to how it feels when someone starts lecturing you or pointing your flaws in a very spiritual language, in a very noble language.
Yeah.
So look at try to look at what the person is actually saying to you as opposite to the form. Ego is also form over substance. You know, so that's why we say assassinate or liquidate instead of kill. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Uh, so ego tends to like be very reactive to form and overlook substance over form because the form of what is being said uh, creates kind of either good sensation or bad
Mm.
sensation. But the more you are capable of processing and looking and accepting your own internal reactions, the clearer it will be that okay, so this person is just accusing or judging you. He's just using spiritual language to do that. Just using noble language to. He just told me a bunch of shit, but in a very nice way.
Right.
No, so he just told me that there's something wrong with me, but in very nice language.
Yes.
Now, so it's an individual journey. The transformation of a society as an enlightened society only happens as a sum of transformation of each individual.
Mm.
There's no such process as the transformation of society, right? So basically, even the as we discussed this process right now, it's a consequence uh, of people being raised in a less and less abusive environment. So their consciousness in general, I mean, not by a lot compared to authentic enlightenment, but in general, is less traumatized and less confused.
Right.
So that's why, for example, you will now see many more people agreeing with the fact that violence is usually wrong than you would see in like 13th century, where it was like,
Yes.
oh, no big deal, just cut his arm off, he will
Right.
learn his lesson. Yeah. So, so, uh, so yes. So pay attention to your inner experience. Pay attention to your reactions to what is being said to you. See form over substance, and trust your intuition. If your intuition tells you that this person just, for example, really enjoys lecturing you from a position of spiritual authority, even though his words kind of sound true, but the impulse, the intent uh, beyond these words sounds kind of dirty,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know? Or like the difference between compassion and pity. So
Yes.
some people like will give you pity, and then they will say that it's compassion, and you will feel dirty because it's pity. Because when someone gives you pity, they elevate themselves. So when they give you what like for example, you could say they could say something, "Oh, I'm very sorry for you," and you would just feel diminished, and then they would say, "Oh, I'm just very compassionate." Well, if you're very compassionate, then you usually don't feel diminished. The deeper you the deeper you accept all your internal reactions to other people, the more your intuition about other people will develop, and the easier it will be for you to say. But the language is
Mm.
extraordinarily deceitful, and the ego co-opts spiritual language just like anything else. Absolutely. That's part of the reason I don't use spiritual language much. But the ego co-opts spiritual language just as easily as anything else. So unfortunately, that's the dynamic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth, and the spiritual marketplace is a circus. It's a freak show. You will see a lot of people who can share authentic insight and can help you, but you also see people who are pretty much abusive, and you will see a mix of the two. Uh, and the clear and less and the more unburdened by suffering the teacher is, the more effective they will be. But those people are rare, and so it is a labyrinth. And ultimately, it's your journey. Only you can sort of pull yourself out of it by your hair.
Yes.
Uh, and the focus of the practice continues to be your conscious experience.
I'm very glad that you're bringing that up, like what the true spiritual awakening path looks like. And it's focusing on yourself because I often, like
Yes.
sometimes when I do my work and I talk about things, I talk about spiritual awakening and I get so many questions about law of attraction and manifestation. And it drives me a little crazy because
Yeah.
that's not what it's about. It drives me crazy that that gets lumped into the
Manifestation
spirituality
doesn't work.
umbrella.
What manifestation, by the way, is a very good example of this kind of modern New Age spirituality, as well as synchronicities, and they don't work the way that people think they do, right? So manifestation, as in as you can see sometimes, uh, like next week, there's going to be financial downfall
Yes.
on you. Claim it. Like if you just say, okay, I believe it, it doesn't make it even more likely. If one actually was quite observant, they would see that it doesn't work. So spirituality and science not only does not contradict each other, but they actually sisters. It's the same way.
Yeah.
Science is an art of objectively observing the external. Spirituality is an art of objectively observing the internal. Like, for example, how does anger arise, and how frequently are you actually right when you're angry,
Hmm.
and does it actually have any relationships to being right? And the same thing, if you objectively look at manifestation, you will see that it doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
Um, Replacing one belief with each other, with another, like if you have a negative belief and you try to replace it with a positive belief, it also doesn't actually quite work. It's
Hmm.
because uh, uh, beliefs are kind of by definition without evidence,
Right.
and so they are supported by some pain.
Yeah.
In order to actually replace a belief, instead of putting another fake belief on top of it, which you don't actually believe, but you just pretend that you believe.
Manifestations, yeah.
Yes. So in
Or
order to actually
affirmations, excuse me.
block the
Yeah,
belief,
affirmations.
yes, like
Yeah.
for example, if you believe deep down that you don't deserve, uh, like I don't know, financial comfort, that you will always be poor, that you deserve to be poor, right? Then you can sort of try to cover it up with a fake belief that you deserve to be rich
Yeah.
by self sort of by repetition, by sort of trying to convince yourself that you believe it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's not going to help you get rich, actually. But what's more important is that the belief that you don't deserve it is still going to be there, because the belief that you don't deserve it comes from your self view. It comes from pain. There is pain uh, behind this belief of being unworthy, you see. And until this pain is addressed and made conscious, and so basically until you cry about it,
Yeah.
you're still going to believe it.
Exactly.
And so many things happen in this modern spirituality, because you see, the thing is, what ego tries to do is it tries to control your inner experience, so to never experience anything bad, and to orchestrate and control life so that you will experience only good stuff.
Hmm.
Of course, life is much stronger than the ego.
Yeah.
Life is not going to succumb to these demands, and life will disappoint the ego again and again and again. So when people find spirituality, the ego oftentimes perverses it as, okay, this is my new set of tools.
Yes. See it all
So
the time.
now
Yeah.
it's like manifestation, this, and that. But but it's not going to work, of course, because life is stronger than this also.
Yeah.
It's going to disappoint you also. As I just said, the spiritual journey is admitting that you were wrong again and again and again
Yeah.
and again.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you're not ready to do that, then you will kind of constantly be trying and honing new set of tools to maintain your experience and try to control experience, until there will be a point where you're completely exhausted from it, and you just absolutely tried everything, exhausted on it. That's what people usually say, call the dark night of the soul. And then after that, authentic realization will happen, like authentic enlightenment will happen. But before that, that's all games. So people play with manifestation, people play with energies and vibes and lots and lots of things. But the mind needs to get exhausted from trying to control your experience for an authentic realization to happen.
You've just described my awakening experience, dabbling in all of that for a while, driving myself crazy, getting exhausted, giving up, going through that dark night of the soul, and then
Yes.
the awakening. That's it. Yeah. And so I can understand why people do it, because it's
Yeah.
very alluring to
Yes.
imagine that you have that control over
Yes.
the world.
Yes.
And that's what it was for me.
Yes.
It was like, well, this is great. You mean I can
Yes.
control things and make it so that nothing bad happens to me? Ooh, yeah, let's do that. It didn't work. But yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I
You
do
have
think
no
it
control over the world at all. Yeah.
yeah.
You only have control over yourself,
Yeah.
actually, ultimately. And the more you resist your inner experience or any emotion or any energy or any vibe, I don't mean to say that you need to get yourself abused. I mean to say the resistance to inner experience, to what you're feeling, the less you resist uh, what you're feeling, the more control you have over yourself. So paradoxically, even if we're speaking about it in terms of abusive relationship, the less resistance you have to the feelings of tears, humiliation, anger, bitterness,
Mm.
like all of this stuff that you may feel towards a partner who is abusing you, the more you allow yourself to feel all this, the easier it will be to leave, not
Yes.
harder. So the more we're trying to control what we feel, the more we're trying to control our reactions to the world's events, and to things around us, the less control we have over our behavior. It's kind of logical on the surface, right? Because
Right.
like if I'm not afraid to feel anything, then I'm much freer in what I do.
Yes.
If I'm not afraid to that loneliness will crush me or that I will get depressed, it's much easier for me to leave an unhealthy relationship.
You're right. Because that was my experience too. Your intuition just becomes that much louder
Yes,
that you can't ignore
yes,
it. Exactly.
yes, yes.
Thank you, Artem. This is
You're
so
welcome.
helpful. So
It was
yeah.
a pleasure talking to you.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have you come back and we'll do more of
Sure
these.
thing.
But how can people who are interested in your teachings and what you have to offer find you? I'll leave some links in the description, but just to share with us here.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So you can go to my website, true/freedom.org. It's a huge collection of my core answers. It actually doesn't even include all my core answers. In my core timeline, there are answers, maybe 100 of them or so that aren't represented on the website. I plan to integrate it there, but it's not there. So you can start with the website. You can read my Quora in the reverse chronological order, which is the default order if you go to my Quora profile. We will also soon put the sensors in a PDF book. I hope that can be downloaded.
Oh, nice.
Then you can follow me on Facebook. There's a YouTube channel that isn't linked from the website, but Lindsay will have
With the
a
link.
link. I do public broadcasts, online satsangs every week. So they're all there, about 50 videos or so. So quite a lot of material. It's a long form, so over an hour each, where I answer people's questions. Um, there's a Discord community, an active community with other teachers, not just me, who with lots of support on the spiritual journey if you need it. It's linked from the website. You can also schedule a one-on-one session with me, uh, both free and paid. So there's a link to Calendly, which Lindsay will also publish. And I live in Northern California, in San Francisco Bay Area. So if you want to come visit me, or if you want me to go to some center and give a talk, answer people's questions, or do guided meditation or some other exercises with people, like radical inquiry. We have some exercises that help to get to the bottom of the unconscious beliefs. Uh, by all means, feel free to contact me. I would be happy to come and do that.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time here, Artem. You are always so incredibly generous. So yeah, I appreciate you coming
My
on here.
pleasure.